concept of synchronicities comes up in my new novel, Heliotropous, a few times, whereby it indicates a shift in timelines. And some people have been interested in where this concept comes from, so I wanted to dive into it here. You can get more info on the novel in the show notes. Ever wondered if a new direction in life is right for you? And wouldn't it be great to have a sign to confirm or deny it? Well, you can actually manifest a synchronicity, a sign, one of those rare coincidences, a serendipitous moment to help you make decisions. Here's how. So think back to a moment in your life when a bizarre coincidence did occur, and it left you feeling astonished. The odds of it occurring would have been very low, or even next to impossible. Most of us have had them. Coincidence and synchronicity are both defined as striking occurrences of two or more events at one time. The difference is that a coincidence is perceived as chance or luck, while synchronicity implies the presence of a deeper intelligence at work. And it was Leonardo da Vinci that said, "Learn how to realize that everything connects to everything else." Synchronicity is also believed to be a form of guidance from the higher self, from the higher mind, a way of showing you where the path lies. And many traditional or mystic faiths actually talk about the fundamental connection of all things within the universe. So the concept of synchronicity might prove that to be true and would eliminate the luck, chance, or accident notion. But can you actually help manifest wild and wonderful synchronicities, big or small, or do you have to just wait around and hope they show up? Some believe that synchronicity is a manifestation of, say, environmental harmony. So what if you knew how to create environmental harmony? The term synchronicity came into popular use because of psychotherapist Carl Jung. In the 20th century, he too often experienced what many would consider as meaningful coincidences in both his life and during sessions with his clients. Jung's original version of synchronicity introduced recurrent images, ideas, archetypes, tying us to other dimensions where dreams come true or where omens accurately predict the future. He also believed that synchronicities mirror deep psychological processes that carry messages in the same way dreams do, and take on meaning and provide guidance to a certain degree. And Dr. Jung actually didn't define the principle of synchronicity because he was a mystic or a psychic, but because after years of working with patients and bearing witness to the events of his own life, it became clear to him that there were mysterious underlying things, a kind of field that was affecting our experience in everyday life. And while many people and educators do recognize the phenomenon, there are many different ways of viewing it. Like the law of attraction theory states that good and bad events in life are caused by your thoughts and your feelings, what you are manifesting, and because like attracts like, synchronicity occurs. Others attribute the experience of synchronicity to, say, psychic abilities, where we intuitively know that a certain person will call us or a significant event will befall us before it happens, and then it does. And some people get warning messages in their dreams. Because our unconscious mind influences a lot of our behavior and at the same time can also communicate with us in a variety of ways. Signs and omens or synchronicities could be the unconscious mind's way of guiding us. So I'll give you a few examples of synchronicity, but then I'll get into the different types later on. I'm sure you've experienced some of these, like seeing repeated numbers, like master numbers, 1111, 333, and so on. Another one is that you may have been randomly thinking about a person that you hadn't thought about for a while, and then you see them, or they text you, or they call you, or something. Something that kind of makes you stop in your tracks and go, "Oh my goodness, I was just thinking about that." Or you might overhear someone talking about an event or about some piece of information that's a bit unusual, and it sounds like an answer to a question you've been asking yourself recently. Or this idea of a deep question stirring inside you, the answer of which comes up in a song, a movie, a novel, an article, or a video you watch. Or, of course, you might dream about a certain type of animal or place and then see that repeatedly in regular life, like over the next week. Now, other types of synchronicity is when you're in trouble in some way, like an impasse or stuck or down on your luck in some way, and then help and support appear in your life when you least expect it, from people you may have never met or from those you least expect it from, all those kind of things. So can you think of any other forms of common synchronicities? Now, the list of synchronicities is long and subjective and is a complex phenomenon. The best way to recognize synchronicities is to think less and feel more. Like listen to your intuition, listen to your sensory and extrasensory perceptions. And by feel, I don't necessarily mean emotions, but like how you get this gut instinct about something. That's what I mean by feeling. Like where you're in tune with an inner wise voice. And that lets you understand the outer signs more easily. And remember, synchronicity only applies if it's spontaneous, like waiting for 11:11 to appear in your clock. That doesn't count. You have to genuinely kind of be surprised and not expect it. Or at least there needs to be a degree of unpredictability involved. Like when you're having a dialogue with someone, you don't control the other person's words or reactions or thoughts. You generally listen when the other person speaks. It's the same with synchronicity and any other kind of guidance. You're just open to whatever. All that said, skeptics are known to sometimes call synchronicity apophenia, or the practice of seeing connections and patterns in random and meaningless data. This is because humans are born meaning makers with a fondness for seeking patterns in everything they see around them. This is kind of an unconscious coping mechanism that we use to make sense of the world and really sort through the overwhelming amount of data that's thrown at us every second of every day. Like we notice and analyze patterns everywhere in an effort to understand our environment and to a small degree kind of control it. Behavioral economists would classify synchronicity as a form of, therefore, confirmation bias, which I've talked about in other episodes. For example, if you're told to look for yellow cars, you'll start seeing yellow cars on the road and realize, wow, there's a lot more yellow cars than you initially thought. But whatever causes it, an increasing amount of people do believe that synchronicity is just far too common, too intriguing to overlook or quickly dismiss and forget about. So here's a few tips to help you tune into the flow of synchronicity and to understand the sacred experience unfolding all around you at any given moment if you're paying attention. And that way you're cultivating your capacity to receive. And I believe the universe always provides you with exactly what you need for your highest growth in any moment. But if you aren't ready to receive it, you won't. Sometimes growth has its own schedule. But cultivating a greater capacity to receive means having deep courage to face the infinite potentials and possibilities your life might present you. It means invoking the truth of what you're actually capable of handling at this time in your life, and it requires you to embrace whatever life delivers to your doorstep with an open heart, an absolute trust or growing trust that it's exactly what is best for you at this time. So if you're going to ask for guidance, you're going to need to meet the universe halfway, especially during your time of seeking. And as you pay closer attention to the occurrences in your life, you will likely notice patterns. At the same time, you don't want to overcomplicate things. Sometimes the universe sends us the exact message we need, but we miss it and go on searching for more. The truth is, the universe expresses a great deal of genius in simplicity. This can be difficult for modern humans to understand as we tend to complicate things. And the other thing is to give yourself permission to believe, manufacture belief, as I've talked about on other episodes. One of the most common questions I get when working with people regarding these kind of signs or synchronicities or visions or dreams, well, how do I know if this is real? Is this just a coincidence? Is it just my imagination? Well, the answer is simple. Your imagination and your reality are reflections of one another. Everything you are presented with, whether it's logically tangible or ridiculously abstract, does have meaning. Sometimes it's overt and sometimes it's vague. The language of the universe is symbolic and metaphorical, and our intuition is the translator. So when we allow ourselves to deeply feel and believe what is being presented to us, the signs become clearer and more compelling. And we further strengthen our ability to intuit them. In other words, you might need to play with the words, what if? What if I don't get any synchronicities? What if I can't interpret signs correctly? That's like turning off the engine, dialing down on your capacity. What if I do get synchronicities? And what if I can interpret signs correctly? That's like turning the engine on and manufacturing your belief. But more and more people are becoming aware that there's this transition that needs to take place where people cross the threshold into another world. And that doesn't mean that there needs to be this violent revolution. This is just a revolution of perception, because from that, everything else comes. We live within a field of potentiality, a field of vibration in which all is possible. Everything that exists in this reality is a frequency. Every thought, every emotion is actually just kind of a frequency. So if we believe that you can't get synchronicities, that you have no power, that everything's just luck or chance and you have no control over it, then it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. But when you suspend disbelief for a moment, like taking off a costume and putting it in the cupboard, and putting instead on the costume of belief, it's just really a choice. Then you open your heart and your mind and you give yourself like a new label. You cast yourself in a new role. You take on a new archetype. And, another metaphor to use is loading a new software to be a manifester of synchronicities. And that is when your band of frequency explodes, both in its breadth and scale and frequency, and you start interacting with the field of possibility and probability in a whole different way, like they're your new friends. And they say, oh, you see me, isn't that great? We can play together. But as long as you walk around going, that doesn't really exist, they go, oh, that you don't see us, so we're not going to play. So the willingness to play, to open to your imagination, often requires getting clear on the ultimate vision of the life you're meant to live. Even if you can't define it clearly, but you get a sense that there is this certain life you're meant to live, something that's more important than all the fears that run through your mind, that can help catalyze you on the journey. Not to say that fear isn't a catalyst, it is part of the alchemical journey, so don't make the mistake of trying to pretend you don't have fear. That can just suppress it, and then it can own you instead of you owning it. So it's common that during large, tumultuous changes in your personal life or in the world, that there are consequences you fear, and this blocks your ability to manifest synchronicities because you've lost track of your ultimate vision. And therefore your interaction with the field kind of dwindles down and you don't see or hear things anymore. So we are creating our own reality all the time by our perception, the thoughts we choose to think, and the meaning we choose to give to any given circumstance. And sometimes what you need in that moment is to ask the universe for a revolution of perception, because some people and systems around you would like to stop you from having a revolution of perception. In fact, that stopping is part of the school of life. If it were easy, you wouldn't learn. So if there are forces in place working to keep us in a state of low vibrational awareness and limited perception, it's also true that we can take that control back whenever we choose, because that's the nature of the game. And when we do, we're often shocked at how life changes and how all the consequences we thought would happen don't actually happen, or if they do happen, no big deal. So Einstein was right when he said, reality is illusion, albeit a persistent one. So are we in a collective dream or a matrix simulation more than this independent physical construct we think we're in? For over a century now, quantum physics has proven that physical events are ultimately determined by metaphysical factors, meaning reality is shaped by consciousness. Synchronicities are one manifestation of that fact. So let's look at a few different types of synchronicities and give them names and categories. So the first are forerunners. These synchronicities tend to show up a couple of hours or days before a troubling, distressing, or precarious event in your life, almost like rolling thunder preceding an impending storm. That's because the upcoming event is a messy, energetic spot on your timeline, and your corner of reality is becoming unstable in advance of it. Forerunner synchronicities also happen when your future is in flux, like when you're going back and forth on a major life decision that greatly affects your future, like whether you're going to move to another country or get married or something like that. When the future is indeterminate because your timeline could go off in one direction or another, it's unstable. There's two unstable timelines that go back and forth, and your life force energy goes back and forth between the two timelines. And so the present becomes unstable, and unstable conditions mean that improbabilities happen more often. Why? Well, according to quantum physics, what we call normal reality is simply the most stable, probable, and predictable path that everyone and everything can take. So when reality becomes unstable, that means it becomes less normal, meaning more weird. It becomes less predictable, more surprising, less probable, therefore more synchronistic. So to recap, forerunner synchronicities are a side effect of an upcoming instability, which tends to be a distressing or precarious situation where the outcome is in flux. Then there are non-conformity synchronicities, which happen when you suddenly deviate from your most probable course of action. That means doing something genuinely improbable based on your past patterns or experiences, something that in most of your immediate probable futures you didn't do, if that makes sense. For example, it could be something that goes against the momentum of your mind programming, of the mind story that you are living by. Your circumstances, your habits, your archetypal characters you live by. You suddenly leave a stable job. You suddenly reach out to a person you'd never reach out to before. Because usually life is pushing you towards your most mechanical and probable outcome. So going against that means defying determinism. When you do something unlikely for an extended period, you deviate onto a less probable future, and this produces other improbabilities, which we experience as non-conformity synchronicities. So whereas forerunner synchronicities come before an unstable area of your timeline, non-conformity synchronicities typically come during and after. Now, one of the keys to understanding synchronicity is that probabilities tend to come in clusters, meaning one improbability begets another. That's because you're deviating onto an improbable timeline. And this brings up an important point, which is that something outside this reality, something beyond linear time, is needed if events are to deviate from their default outcome. Without that metaphysical factor, everything would be mechanically deterministic. Everything would simply be cause and effect. In fact, there's a great movie out right now called Free Guy, which is about a guy named Guy who is actually a non-player character in like a video game, but he thinks he's real, and then he wakes up to the fact that he's an NPC, non-player character, and decides he wants to be a player character. And there's something about that story that actually kind of mirrors real life. Sometimes we go along in our life with all these programs for just this non-player character playing out the roles that society dictated we should play by. And then at some point, maybe you wake up and decide, you know what? I'm not going to play that game anymore. I want to play a different game. I want to be the player. I want to be the author of the mind story. So great movie, check it out. It's called Free Guy, and I think it just came out. So it's like a domino knocking down the next domino from the beginning to the end of time with no surprises or deviation. That's the mechanical timeline. For the dominoes to change direction and touch off a new chain, a hand must reach down and rotate one so that it falls into a new line. And in the movie, it's the code writers of the game who actually inadvertently wake up this guy, who they call Blue Shirt Guy, to a new probability. And that's what happens every time we exercise our free will. Quantum physics would say the conscious observer is what produces synchronicities. What this ultimately means is that the more sentient you are, the more agency you have, the more of an improbability you represent in this world. And since probabilities beget more probabilities, the lives of such walking anomalies are anomalous, if that makes sense. Another type is called expansion synchronicities. And these happen when we go through a significant amount of spiritual growth or transformation. And that includes going through a period of insight and revelation regarding, say, higher truths about existence or about yourself. The sudden change in your being, your essence acts like a bubble, suddenly expanding and sending ripples out in all directions. So not only is that an improbable event where you're shifting to a new set of futures that cause a change in your personal characteristics, but your being is expanding and perturbing the very fabric of existence. Cool, huh? And these things can induce expansion synchronicities. They tend to be symbolic, linked at the archetypal level to the nature of the transformation. So some people even use a dream dictionary to decode them, as the archetypes exist at the subconscious level, which is also where dreams derive their symbols from, which are related to expansion synchronicities. Now, there's also message synchronicities, also known as signs or omens, and they're like dream symbols, except they happen while we're awake. And as I talked about earlier, that can be a recurring number you keep seeing, or a certain animal or insect, or anything really that fulfills a function of a sign that conveys a meaningful message to you. Now, message synchronicities can be encouraging in the sense of confirming a decision you just made or letting you know that all is good and that you're going in the right direction. Or they can be foreboding in the sense of giving you a heads up that something bad is about to happen, or there's a harmful person or influence in your life, or that you're treading down a dangerous path. Now, message synchronicities can be decoded like with dream symbols. The meaning may be universal or vary depending on the person. The best way to decode recurring messages, I think, is to log whenever they happen, like if you do any kind of journaling, and then kind of muse on the circumstances surrounding them. After several occurrences, you can connect the dots and guess at the meaning. Sometimes I even use a pendulum, which I've talked about in other episodes, just asking questions about what it means and trusting that the universe or the higher self is answering the question. Then you can test your guess the next time the same message synchronicities arise. And once you decode your recurring message synchronicities, you can use them as reliable indicators of what's happening or what's coming up, which can really save your butt in many cases, or just make you feel at ease about the direction you're going in. The fact that message synchronicities can even happen shows there's a strong connection between waking reality and dreams. The connection, of course, is that both are ultimately generated by consciousness. The difference is that in dreams, we are immersed in an environment generated by our own subconscious, while in waking life, the environment is generated by a collective or universal subconscious, one that the ancient Greeks called the demiurge. If you think of it in terms of video games, dreams are like playing an offline game on your own personal computer, while reality is using that same personal computer to connect to an online multiplayer environment. If that makes sense, the demiurge is the central server that coordinates the various locally run instances of the game. So when Einstein said that reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one, that is saying reality is made of the same stuff as dreams, but functionally it's more persistent due to the collective subconscious holding it in place. But since our personal subconscious is plugged into the collective subconscious, it can affect its own corner of this collective dream we call reality. And so that brings up the next category, which is manifestation synchronicities. That's where something you see or hear is a direct physical manifestation of a thought or subconscious wish you dwelled upon earlier. Of course, whenever that happens, the question is, was the event going to happen all along and you merely had a psychic moment where you foreshadowed it? Or did your thought literally cause that event to happen through an act of reality creation? Both are possible and both do happen, but the latter is what I mean by manifestation synchronicities. They happen when you dwell on something in a certain state of mind, which causes your subconscious to influence reality and externally manifest a reflection of that part. The interesting thing about manifestation synchronicities is that the physical events needed to make them happen extend into the past, often prior to the originating thought. It's as if you somehow influenced the past to shape the present. Sound impossible? Well, as it turns out, that's completely in line with quantum physics, which has experimentally proven that a choice made in the present can reach back in time and influence the past. It seems the future isn't the only thing that's open. The past is open to manifestation synchronicities that don't violate the laws of physics. Rather, they are a direct consequence of quantum principles. And that's something you can learn more about if you're interested in my Memory Imprint Journal course, in which you rewrite stories from the past, you recreate the meaning, which actually changes your timeline in the future. And you can also create stories in the future as if they already happened to help you manifest synchronicities. So if you want to learn how to do that, check out the Memory Imprint Journal course. You can start with the 5-day free trial on the free tab at mindstoryacademy.com. And then if you want to get into how to do that, rewrite the past and recreate the future, you can join us for the 30-day Memory Imprint Journal Challenge. Again, that's at the free tab at mindstoryacademy.com, or look for the link in the show notes. Now let's get into something we all need to watch out for, and these are artificial synchronicities. They seem like synchronicities, but actually aren't. They're staged for the purpose of deception to make you think it's a sign from the universe. But really, it's a ploy to negatively influence your beliefs and decisions. Now, I'm going to have to go off in a woo-woo direction here, and it might not be your cup of tea. If so, no harm, no foul. Feel free to sign off at this point. Thanks for listening so far. But if you're game, let's look at this. It's happened to me many times, and when I learned about artificial synchronicities, it really saved my behind by knowing about them and not taking the bait. And maybe this has happened to you. So, the theory is that they come from non-human entities. You might call them ghosts, or demonic or negative entities, maybe even negative aliens. To give an example, a client once told me that this attractive woman bumped into him on the street. And at the time he was single and looking, and she seemed way out of his league, but she seemed interested in talking to him. They struck up a conversation, and she ended up handing him this book. She said, "Oh, it totally changed my life. Check it out. It really talks about some of the things we were just talking about, and it'll probably change your life too." And she wrote her phone number in the book. And later that afternoon, he got an email from an old acquaintance, someone he hadn't heard from in a long time, who just happened to mention that he was into the same book. Wow, weird. And later that evening, he saw this rare plant growing in a park that was featured in the book. So he was totally taken by the magical nature of these improbabilities and took it as a sign to pursue this woman, and later to get involved in a kind of cult that had formed around the author of the book, both of whom turned out to be psychic vampires spreading spiritual disinformation. Now, believe it or not, this kind of thing happens more often than people realize. Dark entities fish for gullible people all the time by orchestrating and dangling artificial synchronicities like this. The thing to remember is that if both your logic and intuition indicate something doesn't add up, you get a spidey sense that something is amiss, maybe even a nauseous feeling or this trepidation behind the excitement, do pay attention. Don't throw your inner compass and brain out the window because something seems attractive on the outside. Another thing to note is that the negative entities who orchestrate artificial synchronicities are relatively crude in their abilities compared to the abilities of our own subconscious or higher self, or even higher positive beings on the level of what you might call angels or guides. What negative entities do have in their toolbox is varying degrees of telepathy, where they can implant thoughts in your head, and basic kind of poltergeist or object materialization phenomenon like a plant in a park or an email coming through. Now, these are parlor tricks they use to deceive those who don't know any better. For them, telepathy is easy, so most of the time they just manipulate the thoughts and urges of the people who are being mindless. So we have to be careful of that possibility and not blindly trust every synchronicity because artificial synchronicities are bold, direct, literal, manipulative, and the biggest sign is that they play to our ego and wishful thinking. And lastly, on a brighter note, there are opportunity synchronicities, and these are like artificial synchronicities, except they're arranged by positive beings, including your own higher self. And they're orchestrated with far greater elegance, finesse. There's a poetry to them and a competence that negative entities can't really accomplish. They're the right opportunity at the right time to help advance your destiny, your story, whether to get you out of a tough spot or open up a new pathway in your life. Opportunity synchronicities can be very improbable, but they also seem to fall into place naturally and gracefully. There's a rightness to them deep inside. So they are the epitome of serendipity. They're like a fun plot device to advance the story of your life, the mind story of your life. The signature of opportunity synchronicities is that they bring you a sense of relief, inner peace, inner harmony when you encounter them. And intuitively, you feel frictionless and enthusiastic about it, but in a grounded way. Contrast this with artificial synchronicities, where even when your ego is rubbing its hands with glee, deep down you might feel this emptiness or resistance. Okay, so that covers some of the major types of synchronicities you might have, which are forerunner, nonconformity, expansion, message, manifestation, artificial, and opportunity synchronicities. So when you encounter a synchronicity, ask yourself these questions. Hey, could this be a forerunner of something coming up soon? Or did I just do something improbable that might have induced this? Or did I manifest this by dwelling on it earlier? Or is this a message, synchronicity, a good message or a bad omen? If so, what does it mean? How do I take good action on it? Is it maybe an artificial synchronicity trying to steer me down the wrong path? Or is it a serendipitous opportunity that I feel completely aligned with? Now, what does it mean when you don't get any synchronicities for a while? Well, you might not be noticing them. It might be that you're moving along in a steady, predictable, and unremarkable way in your life. You're caught in the mechanical, deterministic path of your life, and you're not operating from free will enough. Alternatively, you could be so in tune with your higher self and subconscious that these parts of you don't need to edit reality to send you a message, since you have a direct connection already, you're on the right path. Now, in order to manifest more synchronicities, there are a couple of things you can do. The first thing is to think about them more often. Embed this knowledge into your worldview as being natural and expected, to adopt a childlike attitude of magic and wonder about these kinds of things. And this neutralizes the dampening effects of skepticism that might be keeping them away. thinking about them and believing in them also starts attracting them into your life. The second thing you can do is grow and transform yourself through the power of insight, revelation, and discovery. To do that is to spend more time being curious, journaling maybe, being contemplative when you go on walks, being introspective, open-minded, eager to learn new things. So again, that might mean journaling, reading, watching, observing, listening to somebody talk about things that you've never heard anything about. And that's the exact opposite of approved modern lifestyle habits that tend to encourage keeping so busy night and day that you don't have time to do any of that. So it'll be difficult for some people, but it'll be worth it for more reasons than just synchronicity, because changes in your inner life always produce excellent changes in your outer life. And the third thing you can do is identify what urges, impulses, feelings, and thoughts come from your social and biological programming, and which come from your inner spiritual core and spiritual intelligence, from this higher self. The spiritual core, which is the seat of your sentience and free will, is the only thing in you that's not a product of the deterministic timeline. Therefore, it's outside linear time and is capable of defying probabilities. And the more you act from your spiritual intelligence, this true intuition, the less probable the path you walk, and the more you will find synchronicities showing up all over the place. Synchronicities are a personal reminder that reality is something other than what we're told it is. And as time goes on, more and more people will begin waking up to that fact, I believe. Fortunately, you can access and experience that truth right now by paying attention to them. So do check out our Mind Story Inner Coach book, and you can try using the 5-part Avara self-coaching model to trigger more synchronicities. Just go to mindstoryacademy.com or see the link in the show notes. You can subscribe or just check out the Golden Age Timeline podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, Libsyn, or of course our goldenagetimeline.com website and several other platforms. You probably just have to type in Golden Age Timeline into your search engine and you'll probably find it. So that's it for today. Thank you again for listening today. So if you're interested in the book Heliotropist, just go to goldenagetimeline.com.